Hi, thank you everybody. Good morning. I'm really excited to be here. Yes, I'm gonna show you a bit about Angular Augury and how to work with it and how wonderful it is. Let's start. We're here in NGNL, of course. Really great. A little bit about myself. So I'm a front-end developer and consultant. I've been working with Angular for the past few years, and I really love it. And I really love the new version of Angular. It's just Angular, Angular 2, 4, and so on. I've been working on a few things on my spare time. For example, NG Girls. I'm the founder of NG Girls. It's an organization that aims to help women get into the tech world, into programming, to show them that it's not really frightening or bad, and you know how it feels like to be a beginner in the programming world. So it helps them step into this with workshops and other activities. So we've already had a few workshops, and if you'd like to organize some activity with NG Girls, so just come talk to me. We already have some guys organizing a workshop in Hamburg. There's Erica in Brazil, who's also organizing workshops and events. And we have lots of big plans about NG Girls. So really, if you'd like to do something to help, if you have any ideas, if you'd like to organize a workshop wherever you are, then sure, just come talk to me. Another thing I've been working on lately is called Angular Nights. It's a new meetup group where we're going to learn Angular and the ecosystem through working on it, through the fingers, through the keyboard. So it's a brand new meetup group in Israel. And I don't have any pictures to show because the first event is going to be only in a little more than a week. So I'll have pictures after that. But if you're coming to Israel, I'm sorry, when you're coming to Israel, talk to me, tweet me, and let's arrange something. You're very welcome to come to the meetup and maybe to give a talk or a workshop. That will be really wonderful. I'd also like to tell you that I'm really excited to be here in NGNL in Amsterdam. Especially because my father was born and raised here in Amsterdam, and now I come here to his hometown and speak in front of you guys, so it's a really wonderful experience, so thank you. Okay, so let's get into business. What's Augury? So this is from Wikipedia. Augury is the practice from ancient Roman religion of interpreting omens, signs from the observed flight of birds. So an augur interpreted the signs that they weren't really supposed to tell the future, but rather check with the gods whether they approve their plan or not. Okay? So really important not to be confused with an ogre. Totally different thing. Okay, so what's Angular Augury? Like the practice Augury, it's a tool that interprets our Angular applications, its architecture, and its behavior. And it tells us whether we're doing the right thing, whether the application is doing what it's supposed to do. It helps us developers understand our application and test it. And we can observe its dynamic behavior. And it gives us a high-level view of the whole application and insights from inside. Now, Augury is an open-source Chrome extension. It's a dev tool. It's led by Wrangle.io. It's a Canadian web consultancy. And they also stand behind Batarang. Have you heard of Batarang? Is there anyone here who's using still developing with the Angular JS. That's the first version of Angular. All right. So I hope you've heard about the Batarang. If you're not using it, then come see me later. But now they're leading the development of the new version, the version for Angular 2 and up. Instead of me just talking here about what Augury is and what it can do, let's see it live. Let's see a demo. Okay, so first of all, this is the website, Augury's website. And it's got lots of resources and guides. So really useful. You can get into it and learn what you can do with Augury and learn about the architecture. So it also has a few demos for you to try out. So let's just quickly see a few of these demos. So like I said, Augury is the Chrome extension in the DevTools. It sits in the DevTools. So after you install it, and I know it's really small here, but you have this sign of Augury, and it can tell you if you're in the right version and everything. So you're supposed to have it here as a tab in your DevTools. So here it is. And first thing that you can see is the component structure of your application. And the components are highlighted in the browser. So that's really cool. Okay, and you can, of course, toggle the components here. Oops. All right. Now let's look at a few features that we have here. So we have the settings here. So the first really important thing is the theme. We can change it to dark mode. So that's really, really great. I like using DevTools in dark mode, but for this lecture, for the presentation purpose, I'm switching back to light mode, which you can see a little better. So really, really important. Another feature that you have here is changing the component rendering mode. So the default is a hybrid view, where you can see in the component tree both components that you've created in Angular and native elements that where you have used Angular binding with. Okay, not just all elements, not just simple elements, but if you have an input with a binding, like Angular input or some event, then it will show here in the tree. The other options are to see all the components and all the elements. Okay, so now we start seeing the H1 and divs and forms and everything. So this can be really useful sometimes when you're trying to look for some element and you can't find it. And components only, which gives you only the components that you've written in Angular without the native elements. Okay, so let's switch back to hybrid view. And let's see what we can do with these components. So first of all, whenever you do something in the application, whenever something changes, there's, of course, the change detection. So Augury also catches this event, the change detection, and it highlights. So just look at the screen. It highlights whenever something changes. All right? So I can just fill out the form here, and you can see that things here are start highlighting up. Okay, so just a demo app. And then we can see whenever anything changes. All right. So we can see the properties of our components. We can see the states. For example, we have the title here, which we can actually change from within. We can also see the injector graph, which also gives us another view of our component tree. So it only shows us the component that we're standing on right now. So as I go down in the components, it will show the dependency of the component, its parents up to the root component. It's actually the root module. And dependencies of services. So we see that the form new user component injects the service, new user service. And we can see that it was provided in the root module. Okay, so I hope you can see this blue line over here. So we can see where each provider was provided. And even if it was provided from within a component, which maybe for some reason you might do instead of providing it in the module. Speaking of modules, we have the view of all the modules that we have here in our application, starting with the root module, the app module. Everything it has, imports, exports, etc. Everything the modules has. So you can see here, for example, the browser module, which comes with Angular, all the providers that it has. And the forms module, all the modules that we have and import into our application. So that's also one of, it's actually a new feature that they added after Angular has presented the modules with its release. Okay. Another really cool thing that we have here in Augury, and I'm switching to another demo that that uses routes in Angular. So we can see the router tree. So you know how your application, whether you've written it or someone else, you start having all these routes and nested routes, and you might not always understand or remember all the routes and where you're going and what all the possibilities are. So you have here a visual view, a visual graph of the routes of your application. So that's really cool. And you can hover on the routes and see more information about it. You can see whether a route is a regular route or an auxiliary route by its color. Another thing you can see is when you have lazy routes, lazy loaded modules. So there's an indication that that it's lazy over here. And once we load it, if I click here on cities and route to it, then its routes are loaded as well. So you can see that also. Okay, so a really great presentation of your routes in the application. Right. So let's have here. Let's see another demo with a little application that I've written for this. Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Spoiler. Okay. All right. So that's a really small application that I've written, but maybe it can be an application that someone else has written. Maybe you're starting to work with a team and you want to understand the application. Maybe you want to make sure that everything works, to test it, and even resolve the bugs if there are any. So how can Augury help us? Okay. So first of all, if you have such an application, so let's go again to the Augury tab. First thing, you might not have so much time to test it. Maybe 25 minutes isn't enough, and you don't want the timer to to stop, to limit you from working on the application. So let's start with changing the time that you have, the default time that you have in the application. So we have here all our components. And let's open the timer component and just change the minutes to, let's say, 40 minutes. And now we suddenly have more time to work on it. All right. Let's test this application out. Let's see if this link does anything. OK, I'm clicking on it, but it should do something, right? It's like it says open time setter. So why doesn't it open anything? It should open something. We also have here a time setter component, so I know that there's something here. OK, so let's see where the link is. It's here in the time setter, in the timer demo. And setter open, we have false. Now I click on it, and I see that nothing happens. So let's see if the boolean here, if the value can change the behavior. OK, so I'll just type in true. And oh, you see, it works. OK, so if it will be set to true, then we should see the timer, the setter. OK, so still, what doesn't work here? Let's go back to the yeah, we're in the right place. We can actually see the source code. We can jump directly to the source code of this component, also using Augury. Here, if you click on View Source. OK, so we can see if there are any methods that we might use. We can see the template and maybe find the answer here. So one of the things that Augury is also great at, it gives us reference to the debug element of the component we're standing on. OK, so if you already know, maybe in Angular gives us a debugging tools by clicking ng debug. No, I should be on. OK, sorry, for some reason. ng. Oh, probe. Sorry, not debug. Probe. ng probe. And you pass it the element that you're on, and you receive a debug element. So the same thing, instead of being here in our DOM tree, we can just go to Augury and be in the component that we'd like to debug. And we have a shortcut of $A, and it will give us the same result. So here we can just type component instance and get an access to everything that we have in this component. For example, the methods. So I have here toggle setter. Oh, no, toggle setter. And let's see if this method works. OK, so the method works. So what could be the problem? So let's jump back to the source of the component. Now, I don't know if I've mentioned it, but you need to have source maps available to do this. And let's look at the template. Can anyone see what might be wrong with the link? OK, yeah. So we're missing the parentheses here in the click. OK? So here we can easily see it. OK? Also, tip if you haven't heard it already, we want to keep our components as lean as possible, as small as possible. So if you have a small template, then you can debug it really easily. And you can immediately see what's wrong. OK? So we're not going to fix it now. We'll just keep the setter open. and keep on testing things, right? This time setter, we can see that it can emit events. So we can again go to the source and see what kind of events it should emit, what kind of objects or strings or what should be there. So I already know that it emits an event with minutes. So I want to test what happens in the application if I jump to a really high number of minutes. So instead of just clicking here in the setter and going up all the way to 1,000 and doing set, okay, a lot of clicks here. So I can either just change it here or emit the event. Minutes, 1,000, and seconds, for example, 30. Okay, emit. All right, so I see that works. Maybe I'd like to see what happens if I put too many seconds, for example, 70 seconds. It might be a bug in the application if this works. Oh no, you can actually emit such kind of event. Okay, but let's see if it behaves well when it's close to, when it goes down to 0 seconds, and then it's supposed to have the minute decreased. So I want to see what happens with 5 seconds. Okay, so let's see, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We don't have to wait 50 seconds to do so. We can just jump and see that everything okay. Okay, so now let's see what happens if I, for some reason, don't give the seconds. Let's see if everything works properly. Oh, no. Okay, so maybe that's a use case I should consider when I'm developing my application, to check or maybe to give a default value to the event. Now, let's see what happens if, for example, we go to a negative time. Okay, if it behaves well, like 2 minutes. Okay, so it's 2 minutes and 0 seconds. Okay, so, okay, -2. What do you say about that? Does it behave well? As you would expect? I'm not really sure about that. Okay. So you can see we can test a lot of things. We can even actually go to the source and put a breakpoint. Sorry, not in this source. I have to go to the timer demo element. Okay, and I have here whatever catches the event on the set new time. I can put a breakpoint, okay, and go back and emit this event again. Okay, so minutes. 5 seconds, okay, seconds, 0. Actually, I have about 4 minutes now for my presentation, right? So let's emit 4 minutes and 0 seconds, okay? And it goes to the debugger, and you can start debugging your code, right? Okay, so let's let it go from here. And let's talk a little bit more about Augury and come back to this application in 4.5 minutes. I bet you're really curious about what happens when it comes to 0, right? All right, so like I mentioned, Augury is an open source project, and it's a Chrome extension, which is actually also an Angular application. So you can really learn a lot about how to build an Angular application with good practices and how to create a Chrome extension that's doing the things that we can see here. And it's also a dev tool, so how it can connect to the application that you view in the browser. Now, the Augury team has really had to overcome challenges such as performance issues. When they had a really, really large application with lots of components, hundreds and thousands of components, which is a real example in the real world. If you have performance issues, for example, with the change detection in Augury, then it will affect the application that you're observing, because Augury is built into this application. So they had to think about how they're overcoming these challenges, and you can read about it in the architecture section in their guide. And also, as a developer, you probably might want to contribute to open source. And Augury is a really great place to start, because it's really, really friendly for first-timers, for beginners in open source contributors. It has here a really great guide about how to contribute, how to understand the application. And you can also check it out in their GitHub repository. They even actually put here, I don't know if you see that, little hearts to make you want to contribute, to make you want to get into this project. They also have a Slack channel with the Augury team where you can talk to them and ask anything, and they're really, really friendly. And they would answer any question that you have. Let's see how much time I have left. OK, just a little bit. So let's go on with a little bit about the presentation. OK, so like I said, Chrome extension dev tool, it's an Angular application, open source, contribution friendly. It's great not only for developers, it's great if you're a team leader and you would like to see that your team is doing whatever you told them to, like they're developing the right structure and inputs and events are working correctly and all the routes exist. It's great if you're a QA engineer and would like to test a little your code from inside. And let's go back. OK, I still have 2 minutes left, so let's change it to like maybe 10 seconds, and we'll have a countdown with you guys. OK? Are you ready for a countdown? Let's see what happens in 0. So, oh, sorry, is that no? I am supposed to be in the counter. OK, in the timer. OK, so let's change it here. So 15 and 0 minutes. OK, are you ready? Let's count down. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So, great. Great, thank you. So you can observe the flight of the birds from this application. This application will be available on GitHub, but I'm not recommending you to learn anything from it. It's really buggy, but it's written in Angular 4. And so Augury would love to have your help. And if you have ideas for new features or you'd like to help resolving the bugs, that will be great. And you can reach out for me in Twitter, email, and any way you'd like. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.